and welcome to the Trading Secrets Textile Fair. When Indian fabrics spread around the Western world, either through the Silk Routes, Arab traders, or early European colonialism, they became the talk of the town, on par with spices from the Indian subcontinent. So let's talk a bit more about them in this origins and etymology packed episode, starting off with cotton. India is not the only birthplace for cotton, not the plant nor the fabric. Cotton is naturally found across the entire tropical belt, and people have made use of it to make clothing for several thousand years, as proven by archaeological evidence. So then why was Indian cotton all the craze for thousands of years? Well, geography and timing played a big role. Until the Europeans set foot onto the New World, we had no way of knowing the capacity in which cotton was being used in the Americas. So, till then, India fed the world cotton. And the world wanted lots of it. But what made cotton such a prized possession? And why specifically cotton from the Indian subcontinent? Well, first and foremost, versatility. That was the key. Cotton can be woven thick, thin, sparse, tight, and it serves many purposes. It provides ventilation in the desert and insulation in the cold. It takes dye really well, which silk and linens just cannot do so easily. Point 2, climate. A whole lot of Indian land falls in the tropical belt, and the weather throughout the year doesn't change much. Cotton grew well and abundantly, and just the right amount of humidity allowed for the spinning and weaving of high quality and durable threads. Next is the sheer production rate in the Indian subcontinent. Since cotton was domesticated and produced here several millennia ago, the weavers got a massive jumpstart in its development compared to the rest of the world. Indian weavers could produce yards and yards of cotton cloth in a single working day, which just wasn't matched by any other country prior to the Industrial Revolution. Whether it be via the sea or land, India could export its goods super easily and in bulk. The earliest evidence of traded Indian cotton that I could find takes us 7,200 years ago to Tel Saf in the Jordan Valley of modern-day Israel. Here, archaeologists found traces of dyed cotton fibers, and since cotton isn't native to those lands, they deduced that it must have come from the Indus civilization. Since then, Indian cotton as a traded commodity has been mentioned by several Greek and Roman historians, and also in my beloved Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. The nature of cotton traded over the years has taken many forms, and its reception has had its ups and downs. Over the centuries, the different varieties found internationally have ranged from calicos, which were exported from Calicut, muslin, embroidered or block printed cotton cloths, and one thick blue dyed cotton which was initially used by fishermen, which would soon become a global fashion mainstay. What could I be talking about? Just give me a second. Dungarees! Okay, although mine are made from denim, dungarees were originally made from a thick, robust, coarse cotton cloth, occasionally dyed blue, manufactured in a coastal town near Mumbai called Dongri. Unfortunately, my efforts to find out what exactly did the farmers originally use the fabric for drew a blank, but we do know that they exported this fabric in large amounts. And the Brits started importing this Dungaree cotton in the 17th century, initially to use as ship sails or tarps and other such products, and eventually to make sturdy trousers. The word Dungaree, which originally meant the fabric, quickly came to be associated with the piece of clothing itself and was anglicized from dungaree to a pair of dungarees. Later on, when a bib was added to the trousers for better comfort and mobility in the industrial workspace, it gave rise to the dungarees as we know today. Since the 1800s-ish, they have also been made from denim, but the word has stuck around. In the US, of course, these are called overalls, but in the UK, and I think some people in India still call these dungarees. and I love me a good pair of dungarees. Look at that. Oh, so comfortable. But you know what? Ever since women started wearing dungarees in the industrial workspace, this outfit feels just a little bit incomplete. Let me go fix that. Oh, okay, that's better. God, isn't bandana just an iconic piece of clothing? Donning it a certain way could make you a farmer, a pirate, a cowboy, a riveter, or a gangster rapper. And none of these stereotypes are Indian. So why mention it in this video? Well, that's because the word bandana is the anglicized version of bandhani. Bandhani is a traditional Indian tie-dyeing technique. The word bandhani itself means tying or tied in many Indian languages. Bandhani cloth was used for regular Indian clothing, blouses, skirts, and headscarves, or kerchiefs, as the British used to call them. And the story goes a little bit like this. Early Dutch and East India Company men had started using snuff a lot. And when you sniff snuff, you also need to sneeze a lot, which had started leaving a yucky snuff stain on their plain white handkerchiefs. And they realized that these bandhani scarves were perfect to mask that stain. And their vibrant color also just added a little something to their outfit. So then they started importing these bandhani kerchiefs back to Europe. I couldn't find any concrete information on whether they were being commissioned to be the square handkerchief sized in India already, or they used to buy these scarves in bulk and had them cut later once they were in Europe. And the word bandhani traveled along with these colorful scarves, and they are the ones that are now known as bandanas. After the industrialization of the textile industry in the late 1800s, bandanas were produced at an enormous scale, and they quickly swept over the whole world, taking their place as an uber practical, versatile, and downright fashionable piece of accessory in fashion history. As the cotton weave made them breathable, flexible, and easily washable, these bandanas found themselves being used in a myriad of ways. As a medium for presidential campaigns, farmers' protests in the Netherlands, feminist iconography, and also in the 1970s by gay men to discreetly communicate their sexual preferences and desires to other gay men. Out of the thousands of types of patterns found on bandanas, none of them are quite as iconic as this one. And what makes it so iconic? Why, it's the Paisley pattern on it, of course. Which brings us to Paisley! The word Paisley has got nothing to do with India. It's just the name of a tiny town in the southwest of Scotland. We're once again in the late 18th century, and the Dutch East India Company had started importing fine woolen shawls from Kashmir and selling them all over Europe. Their popularity exploded, and suddenly there just weren't enough shawls to meet the demand. So this tiny Scottish town stepped up and started producing their own versions of the shawls, but stuck to the original pattern and motifs. As colonial whitewashing goes, this pattern eventually came to be known internationally as the Paisley print. Now, this pattern is not 100% Indian either. It's Persian in a sense. This pattern or motif started appearing on shawls and other fabrics when Kashmir was under heavy Persian influence. In Persian, it's called bote, which has several meanings. It can mean a bush, a shrub, bramble, herbs, etc., but always botanical themed. And in Kashmir, it's called butta. Different cultures and languages perceive this shape to resemble different things, such as pears, pickles, peacocks. And I know that I always thought that they look more like artistic mangoes than anything else. Now, I mentioned that the woolen shawls that were being imported came out of Kashmir. So, the obvious next fabric is a Pashmina or Cashmere wool. While the shawls being produced in Paisley were okay, they still lacked the finesse and the feel of an original Kashmiri shawl? That is because the authentic Kashmiri shawl was handmade from wool procured from a specific species of goat found in the Himalayan mountains. This wool is now known as Cashmere because of Kashmir, and the shawls made from it are known as Pashmina. At Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, these shawls and their colorful motifs had to be laboriously woven by hand, usually several hands, and the production time was quite long. The yarn is naturally very warm and exceptionally light in weight, giving Pashmina its unique top quality. This luxurious fabric was an object of utmost luxury already in the Himalayan region long before the Europeans wanted it. The Pashminas and products made from Kashmir wool were traded along the silk trade routes for several centuries until they reached the markets of England and France, and the demand for them grew several folds. And as I mentioned earlier, they eventually started manufacturing their own shawls. The French even crossbred Cashmere goats with French Angora goats and created Kashgora goats to produce high-yielding wool. And I guess it worked, but it's still not the same as the original. And there you have it! 5 fabrics and item of clothing that have a historic origin in India. These aren't the only ones, of course. Gotta save the others for some other time. Why don't you let me know in the comments below of other such local traditions which are now crazy popular in the whole world. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a giant thumbs up, share it with everybody you know, get them to subscribe to this channel, and I will see you again soon. Gotta start packing up. Bye bye!